Hello and welcome to another album analysis. In today's video we're taking a look at the fourth studio release Dead Club City by the English rock band Nothing But Thieves. This is the follow-up to their 2020 album Moral Panic and certainly shows a big jump in style and change for the band. Typically they've gone for just more of just a generic rock sound, although they have touched on R&B elements on previous albums, but with this they really took that step to another level, really incorporating lots and lots of different elements, influences, styles across the course of this album, and all doing it by wrapping it in a world that they had invented, the Dead Club City, the place where you can live this perfect life. But as we're going to find out as we do progress through the album, everything isn't as great as it seems. And making a concept album is something new for the band. It's not something we've really seen them do with the previous three releases, something they really wanted to explore, something that a lot of bands tend to really do when they get to this point in their career. They like to try their hand at something that's a little bit different. So will this album prove to be a dead and desolate city or simply full of life? Let's take a look at it track by track. Opening the album we have the perfect intro with Welcome to the DCC, with these very disco beats, these very wavy synth, and it was the first taste of the album we did get. Has these very flowing guitars as well, and makes use of samples from Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger by Daft Punk with the clashing cymbals as well. Really interrupts you with this big rush of sound, really this high energy, high octane world building that they really do show through this song. It's why it serves as the perfect intro. You can live your perfect life. They're advertising the DCC as this beautiful place to live, all the heaven all the time, and you can really see that with the sounds they do incorporate. It needs this dancey retro style to really show this club atmosphere, this high energy, everybody in a feel good mood, and it really does that very well. It does feel like an advert or a trailer that really sucks you in, really pulls you in, and really envelops you in the world that they will explore throughout the album. And this scene setting is essential to this album in the way that it provides us with a bit of an idea of this world. It really is very descriptive, kind of gives off this feel for anybody that's been in a club, they're just living in that sense of ecstasy almost. You can really see how the song pushes that through the music video, but also certainly just through the music itself. Then we do move into Overcome, which is this perfect road trip song that really entices somebody to take a trip away to the DCC. We do have a great sense of chronological kind of settings to this album. It has a really strong flow because of that, as it explores different character arcs, and this is the first one that we do get introduced to, where they've been sold this idea of this perfect life in the DCC and want to take away to it. Touches on the ideas of battling something and really needing a change, scrolling through a life I barely recognised from a hotel room. So just really being stuck in that rut, needing a change to really get you away. And you can see that when you kind of take a break away from on a holiday and things like that, it links in with these ideas to really show that. But it also kind of ties on the idea of relationships and coming through tough times. It doesn't have to just be relationships, could be just life in general, but really shows that idea, and it really does it through these very interesting sounds with these twinkling synths, this carefree guitar solo as well that really emphasizes that idea of this open road trip with the world in front of you, where not a care in the world, and really adds to this really strong energy that helps the song to really achieve what it sets out to do. Then for track 3 we do have Tomorrow Is Close, with its sense of desperation through its unhinged yet swinging sound that really drives it forward. It's time to embrace the insane, it's all we've got left, it's all we've got. Really touches on this dystopian idea that tomorrow doesn't exist, the idea that the world is coming to a close and the DCC is the only way forward. It's the last resort because there's no future at all. And they really touch on these ideas, and it has this really interesting kind of sway, almost similar to something like the Hoosiers' Goodbye Mr. A, in the way that it really just pushes you from side to side and really kind of still has that strong feel, a good energy that we're going to see gradually transition as we do move through the album. But certainly just lyrically touches on this idea of just the end of the world coming tomorrow, the fact that we're driving the world into almost an apocalypse by not looking after it, just really kind of touching on the idea that we kind of all are so busy at trying to achieve something that we don't focus on our environment and things like that. Then we move into Keeping You Around, the final single that was released ahead of the album, with its trip-hop beats that really shows an evolution of material they started to play with on Moral Panic. Really serves as the turning point in the album as well, because it is a continuation from Overcome, just one of the many story arcs that we will see develop throughout the album, and this one starts to really kick things off. And it talks about the idea of people being separated by outside pressures, people trying to pull each other apart almost. If you see a relationship, so you're trying to split split these two people up and things like that. Talks about the idea of your lips want anyone else, mine tastes like everyone else. This idea of kind of cheating, being drawn away from your partner by outside influences, but it doesn't just, again, touch on the idea of relationship, touch on life in general, the idea of building something up just to knock it down, live a quiet life in a quiet town. And I really like this. It kind of touches on the idea of how in busier areas maybe you've got kind of more things drawing you away, being drawn away by the big lights, the big city almost, and there's more kind of things going around you to draw you away. So sometimes having that solemnness, that solitude can make it much more difficult to do so. And I like how we've also got this scaling sound that really highlights the idea of building up throughout some of these lyrics. They really just kind of show this idea of kind of building something up that you can then tear down almost in an instant. It can take one moment to really destroy something. Certainly looking at the idea of trust with this song, the idea that it takes years to build trust with somebody, but you can destroy it almost instantly. It's much harder to build something up than it is to tear it down. For track 5, we do have City Haunts with this very bluesy, rock-like guitar that really comes in, almost similar to something like ZZ Top or early Queens of the Stone Age, and we get this incredible high register vocal that's almost reminiscent of Prince from Connor. It's incredible how high he hits some of the notes on this particular song. Also kind of mixed in with these very bouncy synth sounds and this down-tuned, dirty guitar sound. It's a very jarring and very interesting mix, and it kind of shows this idea of a very cruel part of the town. It's even referenced in the lyrics, and it's a cruel part of town, honey. And you get these just really interesting, less sophisticated sounds, almost like you're down in the gutter, kind of like you're less kind of well-known almost compared to the DCC. You've kind of been kicked out of the club, you've been kicked to the curb, and you're just kind of seen as someone that's below everybody else. And I like the way that this City Haunts reflects this idea that you've been sold this perfect life, this perfect city, but actually in reality it has its down and out people, its down and out areas, and you've kind of visited one of these city haunts. Then we move into Do You Love Me Yet, which gives us our first introduction to fictional band The Zeros, who have been really chewed up by the DCC, so really setting off another one of these character arcs that's being blended in to the album. And it's really interesting because it's reflective on the music industry, but it's done through these characters, hence them being quite down and out. But it blends these sounds of Motown, disco, early 80s rock from bands like Foreigner, Journey. There's a lot packed into this track, and it's probably one of my favourites on the album because there is so much going on, so many layers that at times you would think would clash quite heavily, but really just get pulled together and certainly end up being very cohesive. And you, through the lyrics, you can see this idea, and I'll be flavour of the week, I'll get inside, oh if I can stop fucking around, I'll be worth a fortune. So this idea that kind of you've tried to have that moment of success, that week of success, to get inside the DCC, to reach these higher echelons of the club and things like that, but you keep messing around, kind of blowing your chances, but if you didn't do that, you'll be worth a fortune. We'd also get this bridge as well that really lulls into these much softer sounds. So again, playing with different tempos, playing with different ranges, it's something they do very well across this album. In at track 7 we do have Members Only with its winding arena-esque guitars and really touching on the message of kind of being kept out of certain social circles. I've been hearing this all my life, sorry sir, this is members only. So really not being included, not fitting in with certain social cues, certain cliques, things like that, which I think is really cool how they've actually blended this idea in to the idea of a dead club city. That you often see people not being invited into the club because they're not of a high enough social status. So again, this idea of being kept on the outside, you've been sold this perfect life, this perfect club almost, but you're kept on the outside in reality. So really seeing this development of the actual concept that they've shown through this album. And we do get these very eerie synth sounds in this track, and this blending of hazy down-tuned guitars and R&B beats, again trying something new, mixing ideas together that they have previously tried. Pace does begin to slow as we head into Green Eyes Siena, which breaks up the barrage of sounds and styles, brings you back to a place of peace and reflection with its very crooning sound. It almost has an analog radio feel to it, very, very 1960s almost, where you can imagine old country stars coming over the radio. The last thing I expected was to fall for you. I've waited so long for someone like you to come along. So it's very much a love song. It's something they wanted to include on this, but try and make it sound a little bit different. They certainly managed to achieve that just through this very oldie worldy sound that really is brought through. Oh, what I would give one for one kiss on your open mouth. So kind of almost this idea of you want somebody maybe that's out of reach, someone that you can't quite reach because maybe they're in different social circles or things like that. Then we do move into Foreign Language with its orchestra of synth sounds, these layers that form this menagerie of this beautiful landscape that they do actually set with this. And it really touches on the idea that we did start to see through Green Eyes Siena, the idea of a love story of opposites, one down and out, one higher class. These people are on the same road, just different direction, same note, but different vibration. You could look at things like Titanic, you could look at things like Lady and the Tramp. You see these kind of love stories constantly brought up in different forms of media over the years, and that's what they really tried to pull together on this song. But I love hearing you talk. This idea that kind of touching on foreign language, we can't quite understand each other because we come from different backgrounds or different things like that, but I still want to get to know you almost. So it's something we do see reflected quite heavily. Also has some really curious musical moments with its sliding guitar solo and its soaring choruses that do kind of take us back to some of the band's older material, something that we did see quite a lot across previous albums. Then for the penultimate track we do have Talking to Myself, which kind of has the fallout of Do You Love Me Yet. Has great use of tripling. I'm just talking to myself again. The idea of just being in this state of doing the same thing over and over, but I'm back eating all alone again. Touches on the Zeros, the continuation of their story, the fact that they have not been accepted by the club, by the upper class, and they've just kind of been left to their down-tempo, sluggish nature. And we do see that reflected in the sound with these plodding synths as well. Maybe if I tried a little harder, turned off the news yet, things could have been right. So this idea, this acceptance, that if I'd have maybe done things slightly differently, I could have got myself into these different circles, into these different areas, and really made it big in the Dead Club City. And one of the other strong lyrics from this track is, but ego gets the truth to bend and now the zero equals nothing. This idea that your ego can push you too far. You can kind of think that you're king of the castle, but that can get to a point where it kind of starts to topple you down. Your kind of ground is taken out from underneath you and now the zero equals nothing. The point where you were effectively the one in this analog code, you've now become the zero. You've become a nobody almost. So really showing again that flipping fortune. Then rounding out the album we do have Pop the Balloon, which is probably one of the most curious tracks on this album. Typically we would see them round things out with this soft outro that really just lulls you towards the end of the album. They've done something completely different for this, and I love it because there's certainly a plethora of reasons as to why they have. It really highlights the sense of impending doom. It's kind of looping back to the beginning of the album, almost has this rising revolution feel to it, that all these characters that have been down and out, been mistreated by the Dead Club City, are rising back to tear it down. We've got lyrics like blow up the moon, pop the balloon, do it for you, kill the Dead Club City. So bring this empire, burn it to the ground, to completely destroy it. We do also get some really curious sounds that are brought in on this. We get samples of Daft Punk's Robot Rock. We get these very jagged, disjointed sounds. It really compromises the gap that we have got over the course of the album. It really shows this disparity between the opening track, which was very upbeat, very melodic, very club feel, to this, which sounds almost like a broken machine. Really just kind of has these very disjointed elements. Can make it quite a tough listen because of the over-the-top blasé from the down-tuned guitars and the very just random sense of tempo changes that we do get, but that really help to build this doomish idea. The song also tapers off with this ferocious ending that creeps in and almost jolts you alive with very sharp guitars, really just shows a different style, but loops beautifully back to the actual beginning of the album. And again, it has this almost open and closed book. It's almost like a story with the grand opening and the destructive ending. So I really do like the way they've kind of built everything into one album. It just gives them the opportunity to going forward. If they don't want to continue this story, the chapter has closed and they can try something new, but they could reopen the book with a completely different chapter should they choose to in the future. Overall, this is a very expressive album that really fills the boots of a concept album, starting off with this grand opening scene setting, then giving us lots of different characters and their stories that gradually intertwine to reach the end where we have this crescendic build where we tear the tower down and really bring this high society to an end and destroy this illusion of this Dead Club City as being more than just a mirage. And I really like how through the songwriting the band still incorporates some of these strong ideas. They have these characters they've built in to flesh out the album to give it depth, but they have this real world application, looking at things like relationships, how outside factors can tear people apart, looking at the music industry and looking at the idea of high society not always being what it seems. You can be sold something, you can be led to believe that it's perfect when in reality it's not. And I like how they're touching on these real world ideas through very simple messages, but also building in a concept for that depth. And I really like how they've drawn in so many different influences instrumentally, touching on areas such as Daft Punk, you've also got Journey, things like that, these 80s rock bands, a bit of Queen occasionally, Prince. The only downside is sometimes they can bring too many influences into one track, and at times it can get a little bit muddled as they jump from genre to genre, and you obviously have got a lot of jumping with the different stories that are built into the album that can make it sometimes a little bit jarring to listen to because you're not quite sure which story you're on. So despite the opening and the close being really finite, really pulling these ideas together, at times you can get lost a little bit in which story you are currently following. However, I do think instrumentally as well, it does show a lot of range from the band. Their ability to dive into different sounds and styles, really try something new and pull the best from those different eras, from those different influences, and really make it work. I mean, at times you've really got to give credit to the likes of Connor on his vocals. Some of the notes that he hits in this album is absolutely incredible, how he manages to pull it off, how he manages to try and match or certainly live up to the standard of Prince at times with some of these higher notes that he really just crashes into but never falters. And even just from some of the guitar work as well, I love how they kind of move between something soft and silky into something dark and grungy. They capture it very well, making great use of the synths to really layer in a lot of these different ideas as well that really show this more upbeat, almost lavish lifestyle, and then also still make great use of it on these slower, sluggish tracks. So overall, I'm going to give this album an 8 out of 10. I love the daringness. I love the way that they've built in these concepts. I think that just one improvement would be to just really slightly flesh out some of these story arcs, to really just kind of make them a bit more chronological almost. At times it did get a little bit lost, and you can go from song to song, just not quite knowing exactly where you're at. But musically, very strong. Maybe not quite on the same level as Moral Panic, but certainly a very impressive showing for a band that are switching up their style, trying something new in the form of a concept. So that will be everything for today's video, but please do check this album out, give it a listen, let me know your rating out of 10 in the comment section below, or even let me know your favourite song. There's plenty to choose from, something for absolutely everybody, as it does diversify itself into lots of different sounds and styles, but I would love to know your thoughts. And as always, if you'd like to see more content like this, then please do feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next album analysis.